I'm Charlotte Juergens. I'm the director of Sunken Roads, 3 Generations After D-Day, which is a new feature-length documentary and my first feature-length film. It follows my experience as a 20-year-old college student joining up with a group of World War II veterans in their 90s to retrace their route from World War II through England and France. And it was a really life-changing experience for me at the time. I was incredibly honored and privileged to be accompanying them, and for a lot of them, since they knew it was their last chance to be in France again as they were in their 90s, they wanted to talk in a more open, intimate way about their memories from the war, and some of those had haunted them for 70 years. So I felt really honored to just be there with my camera in those moments when they wanted to talk. Sunken Roads is less about World War II than about the memory of the war, and I think at the heart of the film is intergenerational friendship, and it's really a film about connection. The name Sunken Roads refers to the French countryside where a lot of the fighting took place after D-Day. So they have these massive hedgerows known as the bocage, and there are sunken roads in between them. And that's where a lot of fighting took place. And for the veterans I was traveling with, a lot of them had pretty traumatic experiences that happened there and long-term memories that they wanted to sort through. And for me, Sunken Roads also, on a more metaphorical level, kind of hints at this idea of digging deep into memories that have been, sitting for a long time. So, yeah.
What inspired you to make this film?
So this film was inspired by the story of my great-grandfather, Pat, who was a Stars and Stripes correspondent and landed on D-Day and joined up with elements of the 29th Division near St. Lo. And right before he died before I was born, my mother did an audio interview with him and recorded his really gravelly, amazing Texas voice talking about these stories, and he'd never opened up about them before. So listening to that interview as a kid, I just was enthralled by his story, and I wanted to know more. And as a college student, I was really interested in history, and the 70th anniversary of D-Day was coming up, so I wanted to retrace his route to kind of, in a literal way, follow his footsteps through his experience in World War II. And I ended up, through a long kind of series of convoluted twists and turns, meeting up with a group of veterans from his same infantry division. And they were at the same time kind of retracing that same route, and I got to accompany them. So joining up with these other men from the 29th Infantry Division ended up being kind of an incredible way to get to know him indirectly through those relationships.
What do you hope to accomplish with the film?
So with Sunken Roads, I'm really excited to present a different view of D-Day that people in my generation who might never have the chance to meet a World War II veteran in person, and people younger than me, so that they can feel this war on an emotional level, so that they can have the experience of a casual conversation that ends up being really meaningful, and those experiences are harder to have as these people unfortunately pass away. So it really felt almost so lucky that it was uncanny to be able to be there with my camera kind of at the last possible chance to document those stories. And I think there are a lot of military documentaries that are told in a way where if you're already emotionally connected with this history, you feel it. But that if you're a little removed from this history, you might feel a little bit distanced from it. And sometimes I think the rhetoric of the greatest generation can feel a little bit distancing for people who are younger and, might only really know this history as a series of names and dates in a textbook. So hopefully Sunken Roads will be able to kind of give them a window into the personal side of World War II.
How did your experience making the film influence you?
Well, when I started making the film, I really didn't plan to spend my life as a filmmaker. I wanted to be a history scholar, and I was in undergrad working towards that. And this project just was so visual that it really called for, I guess, capturing the images of people's hands and eyes as they talked, of the French countryside as it went by, of the faces of these French kids as they met the veterans. And I realized that, I had a visual project on my hands. And so I had a kind of life-changing experience in turning this into a film. And now I definitely still want to move forward with my plans to be a historian. I mean, I did my master's in history, and right now I'm pursuing my PhD, but I really hope to present my work through a combination of writing and film, because now that film is part of my toolbox, right? When a project wants to be visual, I feel like I can kind of rise to the occasion and do that for a project. So yeah, making the film changed my life on an emotional level. I cared about World War II history before, but I had never really been able to imagine myself in their shoes. And becoming such close friends with some of these veterans really made me register what they had gone through on a much more personal level. And I think that also just transformed the way I wanted to approach storytelling, the way I wanted to approach interviewing and everything. So, yeah.
How do you hope this, so you've mentioned a little bit about the intergenerational audiences. What about women? You mentioned in your press kit that this film apparently affects or influences women differently.
Yeah, I mean, it has been kind of eye-opening and humbling to realize through our test screenings and through a bunch of screenings at museums and in theaters. Again and again, I've had women come up to me afterwards and say, I came here with my husband or with my dad or my grandpa, and they kind of dragged me along, but I don't really feel connected to military history, or I was never interested in World War II. And this film has changed that for me. Suddenly, I really want to do that research, or I really want to have these conversations with my family member. And, I think that sometimes military history is told in a very male-centric way. Like a lot of military documentaries have that like male narrator that, it can be a little bit hard as a woman to imagine that this history belongs to you. And that's certainly not true for everybody, but I think some people feel that way. And so it's been great to realize that, I didn't have this in mind when I made the film, but that I guess because Sunken Roads is narrated by a young woman, and because you're seeing these 90-year-old men's stories through the eyes of a 20-year-old woman, there are a lot of women, and particularly young women, who've found it really helpful as a way to kind of access that history.
And what suggestions would you make for people looking to have these conversations and research more with their family?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think that my number one suggestion would be to take a lot of time with it and let the conversation go where it wants to go. And if you don't get to the end of a story, that's okay. Maybe you can circle back to it another time. But I think that just letting that person know that you're interested, and that whenever they're ready to talk, you're ready to listen. For me, at least, it felt like that kind of created a sense of trust and a sense of safety, and then from there on, the conversation will go wherever it goes, which is really exciting.
Now, where else can audiences view the film or find information on you and the film?
So it's really exciting that Sunken Roads is coming out on DVD and streaming this Memorial Day. And if you go to sunkenroads.com, you can find our streaming links and our DVD order form. And you can sign up there for our newsletter as well, where you can stay up to date with all future news about the film. And if you're interested in more information on my other projects, you can go to my website at charlottejuergens.com.
And is that the best way? Because I know a lot of the people who came this weekend were interested in connecting with you personally because of their own stories.
Yeah, I love to talk with people about Sunken Roads, and would be really excited to hear any thoughts you have, any stories you want to share. And on sunkenroads.com, there's an email address, and yeah, I would love to hear from you.
And what are you working on next?
So my next film, the working title is Afterthought, and it's a film about COVID memorials, and it tells two interwoven stories about individuals and communities that are really grieving the loss of loved ones right now and are figuring out ways to commemorate that loss. So Afterthought focuses on memorials large and small. One of them just commemorates one person, and one of them is a collective effort from an entire city. So I'm really excited to work on another project that is about memory, and that has kind of a personal element for me, but that's quite different from Sunken Roads as well. So if you'd like more information about that project, or if you'd like to stay up to date about it, if you join the Sunken Roads newsletter, I can definitely give you the option to stay posted on that film too.